Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Couloir Mining Talks. We're joined by Michael Rowley, CEO of Stillwater Critical Minerals, with over 3 decades of executive experience across exploration, mineral testing, and environmental industries, and as one of the founding shareholders of Stillwater. Michael brings unparalleled insight into critical mineral space. Under his leadership, Stillwater is advancing its flagship Stillwater West project in Montana, positioning itself as a key player in the North American supply of critical minerals. Our research team maintains a buy recommendation, reflecting its strong fundamentals and promising growth prospects. Let's dive into Michael's journey and see how the company needs to proceed forward. Michael, it's great to have you here.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so let's begin from the early years. Did you always want to get into metals and mining, and how did you get into this field?
My entire professional career has been in mining, starting in 1990. It is big business here in Canada and in Vancouver, and I guess that was what drew me into it. Initially, I was on the biotech side,
Mhm.
and my career began with that mineral testing and environmental work that you mentioned, but it quickly morphed into mining applications and then just pure exploration. And
Mhm.
actually, I took this company public in 2007, and I've
Mhm.
been with it ever since. Interesting to note, little side note, and maybe foreshadowing for where we'll go here. I was in Montana in 1996
Mhm.
with my own patented process recovering copper from Berkeley pit water in Butte, Montana. Ahead of its time, but something that I look back on with pride today.
Absolutely. And for those who are unfamiliar, can you briefly describe the critical minerals market and where does Stillwater fit in with its key focus areas?
Yeah, critical minerals is very much a geopolitical story. And with nickel at $7 a pound right now, China is flooding the market with inexpensive supply from Indonesia. That piece that is growing in global dominance of that supply chain. Many of these operations are losing money, and that is causing great concern in the West. We've seen BHP close Nickel West, a direct result of Chinese flooding from Indonesia.
Mhm.
They even commented on that in their July news release. Um, we could comment later more generally about the disconnect in our sector and the lack of funding for the
Mhm.
stage of company that we're at. Keeping it to nickel and geopolitics, the U.S. began listing critical minerals in 2016, and the list has only expanded since then. Now almost 50 commodities. We have 9 of them in Montana,
Mhm.
and we're in a district that has produced those minerals since long before they were critical. They produced chrome in the war years, subsidized by the U.S. government, also foreshadowing. And then our neighbor, now Sibanye Stillwater, and the ongoing production of PGEs, also nickel and copper and other elements, from the deposit right next door to us. Um, this is a really good place to be. It's the right time to be in the US as the US looks to build domestic supply chains of critical minerals. I've met with many government officials. They want to quickly build those supply chains for those 50 elements,
Mhm.
and included the 9 that we have. And I guess the final point, the U.S. is bringing unprecedented funding for this,
Mhm.
and that looks like it will increase with the incoming administration,
Mhm.
who's talking about changes to the IRA Act and such to not even look at friendshoring as much as the IRA Act would.
Mhm. You briefly mentioned Montana, so let's stay on that topic. It has such a rich mining history, specifically. How does the region's legacy influence your company's operations and vision in terms of permitting, infrastructure, and community relations?
The U.S. in general is spotty, like Canada. It's very much down to exactly where you are. We're in a very pro-mining part of Montana. Mining, our claims were mined in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There are adits and shafts and fast working
Mhm.
roads. And our neighbor is mining actively ongoing. In fact, the highest grade PGM deposit in the Western Hemisphere by far, the beautiful JM Reef deposit, which speaks to the overall Stillwater complex that we're half of. There's a terrific mineral wealth there in southern Montana,
Mhm.
and bipartisan support for the lost mining jobs as a result of layoffs next door to us at Sibanye due to palladium price.
Mhm.
More broadly in the state, 24 billion pounds of copper have come out of the Butte area. I mean, this is world class stuff. and it's been recognized. I've met with all levels of politicians, and they're all pro-business, pro-resource, pro-mining jobs in Montana, and I'm very encouraged, actually. And I'll note also that the east of the state is very oil and gas and coal. So you've got, in general, a terrific resource base there in Montana. To your question about permits, we've never had any challenges or concerns where we are. It's always just a process. It's 3 months for this, 6 months for this. It's been very favorable.
Just to expand on your point of you meeting with politicians in Montana, what can you tell us about the state's support for critical minerals and how does it align with Stillwater critical minerals goals?
Sure. Yeah, we first met with Governor Gianforte 2 years ago. Very positive meeting, and continued that this year. More recently, I've met now with all 4 federal politicians from the state, and that's the key in gaining that bigger money. As you likely know, the DOE will fund beneficiation studies and the kind of carbon sequestration, hydrogen production work that we're looking at, and hydrometallurgical processing type things. It's the Department of Defense, the DOD, that will fund through an act from 1950 drilling.
Interesting.
And PEA feasibility studies and the kind of things that we need to do next at Stillwater West. So yes, we've met with Department of Defense, Department of Energy, all levels of politicians, state, also the State Chamber of Commerce as well, for that matter, and the Army Research Lab.
Interesting.
All positive. I'm very encouraged by the reception and what we can do in Montana.
Recently, the news came along that the U.S. Department of Energy are committing $3 billion to bolster battery manufacturing. And what kind of potential do you think for projects like Stillwater's contribute to this growing demand?
We're already part of 2.75 million in DOE grants. Admittedly, not directly battery metal. They're more related to hydromet. Well, that is battery metal, I guess, and then hydrogen production from geological hydrogen production. In the bigger picture, we would be the raw supply of minerals to that downstream processing of battery metals. And that's really been the shift in the Western world so far, is that there's lots of focus on downstream processing, battery plants, beneficiation, processing. Where is the raw supply? And that's the pitch for growth stage companies with resources in the ground like us, and especially with a major on board. It takes time to de-risk and advance these projects to production. Where are those projects? Exploration has been starved out now for 8 years or more. There are very few projects in the pipeline, and that's why we should be interesting. We're setting up very nicely to be a large-scale supply to those downstream processing, such as the DOE.
You just mentioned a major. What are those strategic major shareholders that are with Stillwater?
In our case, it's Glencore. They've invested twice recently, reaching back to June of 2023 with their first investment. They're now a 15.4% equity shareholder. They're on the technical committee, 1 seat of 3, and they're on the board. They added their VP of corporate development of business development to our board, Bradley Adamson. And he's been a really good addition. They've been a good addition. The key point there, I guess, is that it's easy to do a project level deal when a major is interested.
Absolutely. To
get them to do a minority equity stake is the hard part. And we got there in 2023 with that 9.9% equity round. That leaves us all kinds of options in what we have to do next to really build this to its $1 billion potential. It also gives Glencore a front row seat on something really exciting. And they've been quite upfront that they like my team, they need my team, and they certainly need the ground that we have. So it's a good work together.
Absolutely. I think having such a big strategic major partner, as well as connecting with people that you've been connecting with, and along with that, the assets that you have in Montana, I think really speaks for itself at the end of the day, right?
And the positive response from politicians in state and federal levels. I mean, that is part of why I'm meeting with them. Let's face it.
And they believe in you. They actually, you mentioned they're pro-mining, which you don't really get to see a lot.
Yeah. No, I've met with John Tester, Matt Rosendale, Ryan Zinke, and Troy Downing, Steve Daines, the entire federal contingent. Gianforte, we also mentioned at the state level. Troy Downing, you saw his pictures on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I put them out on LinkedIn. He loved the whole trip, and his only the only down point was that he wasn't allowed to fly the helicopter like he wanted to,
You mentioned
like
that
he
in the
used to
post.
do.
You mentioned that in the
Yes,
post. Yeah,
which was kind of fun.
that's funny. Yeah. As far as drilling results, are there any drill results or milestones from Stillwater West that investors should know about?
Well, the past drill campaign is indeed driving a resource update.
Mm-hmm.
That modeling work that you saw from us was the most recent major milestone that was driven by that drilling, and also by this summer's airborne geophysical survey, which was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That model we put out 2 months ago is a thing of beauty. It's Ivanhoe quality, and this is Ivanhoe's past head of geology
Right.
leading the model, right? We
Mm-hmm.
brought him to do the same magic that he did in Ivanhoe's Flat Reef to related rocks in Montana. They've now modeled in detail that deposit core across
Mm-hmm.
9.5 kilometers in the heart of the 32-kilometer wide project.
Mm-hmm.
The scale here is staggering. And the key point of that is we've mapped now continuity across those layers. And that should be obvious from the fact that our neighbor's deposit, Sabanier's deposit, is actually contiguous
Mm-hmm.
across even 45 kilometers. But you can see that peridotite zone mapped very nicely. That's highly prospective for us. It's
Mm-hmm.
wonderfully underexplored.
Mm.
And all that area between our 5 deposits is open for expansion, the area around those deposits. And that's what we're focusing on in the coming year.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to expand on your technical team, you mentioned you've recently got one of the geologists that helped with the Platte Reef project. You recently also added another geologist from Bushveld and to the team. How is that expertise contributing to the advancement of the overall company?
It was essential. We
Mm.
added both Danny Grobler and Albie Britz,
Mm-hmm.
ex-head of geology and ex-senior geologist for Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe, of course, advancing their Platte Reef mine in South Africa, adjacent to Anglo-American's Mahalaquena, affectionately known as their cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
These are really known as PGM mines, platinum group metal mines, but they're actually the biggest nickel mines in South Africa.
Interesting.
And with 9 billion pounds of nickel and copper and 15 billion pounds of nickel and copper, they're giant nickel sulfide mines that are very well placed. That analogy is very real in Montana. It's
Mm-hmm.
a layered complex like the Bushveld that hosts Platte Reef. So you asked why we bring them in to lead the expansion in Stillwater Complex.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 guys that have been working in Stillwater Complex for over 24 years each. To bring them together with this Ivanhoe expertise that's been in the Bushveld for
Mm-hmm.
about 24 years each.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, 20 years each. That level of expertise is just, it's actually been great fun.
It's almost required as a great leader that it kind of gives you a sense of how important a team needs to be when it comes to success of the overall corporation. It's not just mining, but any industry in general. So just to talk about leadership in general, what's your philosophy on that?
It's exactly what you described. It's find the best people, bring them together, and let them do their job. Uh, but as leader, you have to control, really the boundaries
Hmm.
and the focus.
The culture, essentially.
Yes, yeah. I'm not a geologist. I'm a technical person. I have a science degree.
Hmm.
But what excites me is building something, communicating, which I like to do with the public, and then adding value. And I see more than ever the potential to do that at the Stillwater West Project, Montana.
Hmm.
Um, bring these guys together, add some funding, a bit of direction, let them do their magic, bring Glencore in.
Hmm.
It's been fun. Despite the markets and the headwinds, I believe we'll get there.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, where value is to be found, people will take notice of that over a long period of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It is a longer term game. And
exactly.
this bear market has been years longer than I thought it would be. We were talking about that earlier, actually off camera. It will turn. It has to turn.
Hmm.
And quality assets like this one, with quality teams, and especially with juniors like us, with a major on board,
Hmm.
really a lot of your vetting is done for you, and you can focus on the few companies
You don't see many players like yourself in the industry for sure.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
It's taken me since 1990, apparently.
That's great. Well, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive a bit more deeper into your flagship project, Stillwater West. Can you tell us about your unique characteristics of the Platte Reef style nickel and copper sulfide deposits you're exploring?
Sure. This is 1.6 billion pounds of nickel copper sulfide with cobalt, 3.8 million ounces of platinum group elements and gold.
Mhm.
It's already world-class stuff. And that's in 5 deposits across that 9.5 kilometers that really look like they continue across 32. The potential gets very forward-looking
Mhm.
very quickly. What's attracted Glencore is that scale and that potential. It really looks world-class. Also, it's polymetallic. You're not beholden to any one commodity. It's internally diversified. We're 48% nickel by value. Then you've got significant copper, cobalt, PGMs, gold. They like that. We like that. It's a little harder to sell in the market, but the biggest mines in the world are actually polymetallics, and that's for a reason.
Mhm.
That value is there, and that multi-commodity value. Another point is optionality on mine method. We have high grade within mid grade within low grade, 12 million tons within 120 million tons within 255 million tons bulk tonnage. This means we can build a big or a small mine depending on commodity prices, surface disturbance requirements, whatever. That's another thing that Glencore likes.
Adjusting with the winds.
Yeah, exactly. You see a lot of nickel projects out there that need a $9.50 per pound nickel price or an $11 nickel price, even $8. Nickel is $7 today.
Mhm.
It's awfully nice to have that optionality. Then there's location. The infrastructure is there. Sibanye is mining less than a kilometer from our biggest deposits at Chrome Mountain. They're adit from the East Boulder, actually comes in from the north and is right there.
Mhm.
At the other end of that adit is a sulfide flotation concentrator. They have a nickel copper sulfide ore, really. It's very rich in palladium platinum. We would be making a similar ore.
Mhm.
The infrastructure is already there. The pro mining mentality is already there.
Mhm.
And, there are a lot of good miners looking for work now.
So essentially,
Um,
what's required is time.
yeah. And the proposal to the U.S. government in
Mhm.
our white paper is basically to accelerate
Mhm.
that, knock years off the timeline, and let's
Mhm.
get to a production decision here in a matter of a few years.
Right. Well, Michael, as you know, the commodity market can be very volatile in its nature. And I think this conversation definitely needs to talk about a little bit on the risk aspect. Um, what are the biggest challenges you anticipate for Stillwater West, whether operational, financial, or market related?
Currently, it's access to capital.
Hmm.
Capital is certainly on offer, but on what terms? What are
Hmm.
we willing to sell, to give up? We've established this project is real. We built the team. We built the asset. Um, I'm offered deals that we simply don't want to do,
Hmm.
right? Um, that's where the government funding piece would be very real. Matching grant funds, effectively
We're
doubling
talking
them.
about the terms. The price is not necessarily an issue, but how you want that.
Correct. And when do you do a project level deal?
Hmm.
When do you sell a stream? You really want to be more advanced before you sell these things. And that's a key point about Stillwater is we've held 100% interest in the asset.
Hmm.
We have not sold a stream. We can play these cards if and when we have to. In the coming year, I'm assuming it'll be equity placements and continue like we've done in the past.
Okay.
But we have other cards to play, and we're certainly having good conversations towards those other options. I really have very few concerns with the project itself and the
Hmm.
local environment. Um, those things are much easier than I ever thought they'd be, frankly, so far.
And sometimes with projects, those variables tend to be the most uncertain. So it's good to hear that you're comfortable with your position.
We know Sibanye just reduced their mine staff from 1,800 to about 1,000.
Wow.
And the bipartisan support we saw from Senator John Tester, Senator Steve Daines for those lost jobs was telling. And that speaks to just how pro-mining this district is.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right next door to us.
Hmm. Yeah. In terms of catalysts, what should investors look for in the next 12 to 18 months?
Updates on non-core assets. We do have 4 other projects that we're in various stages of selling, partnering, and those will bring value. We are working on a mineral resource update in Stillwater. We've talked about that. Our plans for 2025 is a big one. We've got some big ambitions this year, and I'd like to end the year with a PEA study, subject to a few other things falling in place, but we are on that path, is a key point. And I've got the US government and car manufacturers and others asking for a PEA, and when can this be in production? So it's clear with 40,000 meters of drilling done to date that we need to sort of turn some attention that way. Drilling is a big one. We want to drill our biggest campaign in 2025. You'll see announcements about that. Yeah, we're excited. We're also just looking for that general turn in the market. We saw, I think, a hint of that in late October, up to the election, which sort of brought a lot of noise and drove money away from the sector and back to the US dollar, maybe, to Bitcoin and other things. But coming up to that, we saw a terrific groundswell of interest in this sector. And I'm optimistic for that to continue.
Absolutely. In terms of the longer time horizon, you mentioned you want to end 2025 with a PEA, which is very ambitious for sure. If we talk about 10 years, if we talk about the next 5 to 10 years for Stillwater Critical Minerals, what's the goal?
Well, in 10 years, I'd like to see it in production. Could it be 5 years? That's aggressive. Not impossible with that infrastructure right there. Right. So, yeah, that's the timeline we're thinking of.
Absolutely.
It wants to grow. The U.S. wants it to grow. Glencore wants the U.S. supply chains. The government wants the U.S. supply chains. I think we're the right people in the right place at the right time. And I would like to both grow the asset and move it through feasibility studies in the scale of a few years.
Okay. And how can our listeners stay connected on the latest developments at Stillwater?
Criticalminerals.com is the web address. info@criticalminerals.com is the good email to use. Yeah, reach out anytime. This is what I do full time. I love it. Always happy to talk about the company and upcoming catalysts.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, thank you very much for your time today at Couloir Mining Talks. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and learn about the company's exciting advancements. It was definitely a learning journey for me as well. And yeah, if you want to stay updated on Stillwater's journey, be sure to check out their website, as Michael mentioned. Other than that, my name is Vaibhav with Couloir Capital, signing off. Thank you.